Time now to get the latest trends in dive retailing, travel, and training with Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Now, here's your host, Scuba Radio's Greg the Dive Master.
That is me. I am Greg the Dive Master. Check out Scuba Radio every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern Time. However, today, yes, it is time for another episode of Level Up, the podcast for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. I got it right here in my hands, as you can see on YouTube, if you're watching us, and we'll apologize in advance for that. However, I do got Willie to offset the fact that you might see me to help us out. Willie Cline, the man behind the madness of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Willie, it's been a month. How you doing there, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Greg. You've been the man of adventure, we hear. I mean, you've been on the other side of the planet, down under, right? For like a month almost.
Well,
it's crazy.
I just got back from 2 weeks in Australia, 2 weeks in New Zealand.
Wow.
And I didn't do any diving. I saw a lot of ocean water and critters and signs to stay away from, whether it was sharks, jellyfish, or, saltwater crocs was the one that got my main attention.
So in honor of your trip, Greg, we decided to put a weedy sea dragon on the front cover from Australia. So that's only found in Australia, from what I understand, down along the coast there. Victoria, I believe, is the state it's in. But anyhow, there you go. That's very straight from Australia there.
I can tell you from my experience, I did not see that. I wish I would have, but once again, saltwater crocs are just the fact that I was doing some family time and away from diving. I'm planning to actually go back down under possibly in September. They have a big dive show out there. So we'll see how
That'd be cool.
Unfolds. But yeah, it was a great adventure, but it's good to be, back upright where the toilet water flushes the correct way and the whole thing.
They don't say good day.
Yeah. So it is what it is. But let's focus on what has been happening with you. We got we're getting ready to go into dive show season, right, Will?
We are. We sure are. We've got a lot of stuff happening. I got to say a shout out to Sam Smith, the photographer that shot the Sea Dragon. Such a great guy. Yeah. We've got a lot of stuff planned. Britt and I are going to be taking our show on the road and talking to a lot of folks. So, we can't wait to see what's going to happen at the next show, which I think is which is first Boston Sea Rovers, then Beneath the Sea, as I recall, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, Boston Sea Rovers is coming up this weekend, and then Beneath the Sea in New Jersey, Sea Caucus, dive capital of the world, at the end of March, I believe.
Right.
So, Britton, what's going on? What do you got planned for the magazine and the shows and that kind of thing coming up?
That's right. We've got a lot of really cool stuff happening, but first and foremost, it's so great to see all of you. It's been, like you said, just a bit of a month, but it's great to see everyone. We're really excited to be heading to Beneath the Sea in New Jersey this year, March 28th and 29th. So if you are attending, please make sure to stop by and see us at booth 202. Throughout the week, we'll be recording live podcasts as well as interviews with exhibitors, dive professionals, and other industry leaders as well. We'll be chatting about the state of the dive industry, new products, marketing ideas, as well as trends and just shaping the dive retail space and the travel space today. We're also going to be conducting a short survey with the attendees about their relationships with their local dive shops, how often they visit, what kind of diving activities they're participating in, and then after the show, we'll compile all of those insights and share that with the results that we get. We'll share that with the industry. Another thing we're really excited about sharing this year is our new way to experience Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. In addition to the print edition and our digital flipping book, we've added a new digital issue hub on our website. The issue hub lets readers explore each article individually, making it a lot easier to read on a phone or even a tablet, share articles with colleagues, and discover other related stories as well. It really allows our advertising partners as well to appear throughout the issues as readers move on from article to article as well. But again, if you are coming to Beneath the Sea, stop by booth 202, say hi, join our survey, and maybe even jump on the podcast with us, see what we can chat about. And if you haven't visited the new issue hub yet, head over to scubadivingindustry.com, check it out, let us know your thoughts. We would truly love to hear them. And we always look forward to seeing you guys at the shows. But guys, that's all I got for me. I think I'm going to swing it over to Jeff, but it's a pleasure as always.
Yeah. Well, yeah, are we going to talk to Jeff now about Boston Sea Rovers?
Why don't we, since we're on show circuit?
Jeff
Cinciripino, if you just can't wait for Beneath the Sea, we can kick it off a couple of weeks earlier for Boston Sea Rovers. We'll be up in Danvers, Massachusetts. This is the 72nd annual conference and clinic that the Boston Sea Rovers are putting on. We have a full exhibit floor out there with gear manufacturers, travel destinations, nonprofits, dive clubs. It's really a way to kick off the dive season, get your juices flowing for getting back in the water. But the 2 days of seminars, we got over 40 seminars, wrecks, reefs, whatever you want. And then the highlight of the weekend is this film festival, which is on Saturday night, and it's headlined by Howard and Michelle Hall will be headlining the show. And we have Annie Crowley up there, Eric Higuera. There's a lot of big names in the film festival. It's really a great time. So if you're in the Northeast or want to get to the Northeast, hey, we had 79-degree temperatures yesterday. So
nice.
Warming up here.
There you
Can't
go.
guarantee that for the weekend, but we hope to see you up in Danvers, Massachusetts this weekend.
Yeah, what year is this for the Boston Sea Rover show? How many?
72nd annual show. So it started in 1954. I think it's one of the longest running dive shows on the planet.
Well,
I
think that is the oldest, isn't it? Or am I mistaken?
It has to be.
Been a while. It's been a while for that show. Yeah, I always hear great things about that film festival too. They really throw out all the stops for that, and Howard and Michelle Hall are always showcasing something new and crazy and insane that every diver on the planet would love to see. So I'm sure it's going to be quite an event for Saturday night. So good stuff.
Yeah, just so you know, 77 years ago, right? Is that what it was, Jeff? Right?
72nd. It was started in 1954.
72.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, put in perspective.
First
that's right at like 10 years when Jacques Cousteau came out of the Mediterranean with the first aqualung. So, I mean, 10 years later, that's amazing how old that show is.
He was a Boston Sea Rover.
No
course
kidding.
he
That's
was.
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Well, Willie, we ready to get into this and start off with our first author?
We sure are.
So Alex Brylske is up first. And Alex,
that's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, good to see you again.
I'm not getting any.
You can't hear us. Oh, God help us.
Audio here,
God
guys.
help us.
There he is.
All right.
Can you hear us now? Nope.
Can you hear us now?
Oh, come on.
We could hear him, and it was fine when we started, but now, well, let me set it up while he's trying to adjust his things. No problem. Take your time there, Alex. But page 41 of the latest issue of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine is The Great Coral Gamble. Is the future of the Caribbean written in the Indo-Pacific? So why would the Indo-Pacific be a crystal ball for the Caribbean is the question. I think that's what he tries to address in the article.
Anybody hear me?
Yes, we got you now. Can you hear us? He can't hear us. Okay. That's fine. That's what happens when you do, a live stream and that kind of thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We can circle back to Alex and go to the next person. What do you think? You want to do that, Willie? Do you think that might be the move?
You can hear us now, Alex?
Yeah.
Can you hear us now, Alex?
Yeah, I think he's... Oh, you got us.
Good.
Oh, Alex worked it out. Okay, there we go.
I'm a techno genius.
Of course you are. Aren't we all? Okay, so why is the Indo-Pacific like a crystal ball into the Caribbean, Alex? What are you talking about in this latest article for Scuba Diving Industry Magazine?
I wouldn't call it a crystal ball, but there was an article published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, which is one of the most prestigious journals in the world, that astounded me as a conservation biologist. And it was entitled specifically, Coral Species from Another Ocean May Be the Only Way to Save Caribbean Reefs. Had you even uttered this concept in the conservation field a decade ago, you would have been burned at the stake because, instances, we all know that you don't put things that don't belong somewhere, or some belong somewhere to somewhere they don't. And to have seen this published really is a remarkable statement, if not indictment, in the terms of the status of the world's coral reefs. It shows essentially the status of the Caribbean, which is quite dire. In fact, if you haven't been keeping up, many scientists have contended that the reefs of the coral reefs of the Florida Keys have been not functioning ecologically for some time. And recently, NOAA came out and confirmed that statement, along with the fact that they are now in a state of dissolution versus accretion. In other words, there's not enough calcifying organisms to keep the reef stable, certainly not grow. But now the dissolution has exceeded that. And so over time, well, they won't be there. I've not seen anything published that says that about any other Caribbean reef, but the problem that we have in the Caribbean and the Western tropical Atlantic is that we're all related because we're pretty much in the same current. And so what happens one place, is going to affect the others. And so what this article goes into is essentially we have three choices as they describe: to resist, to accept, or direct. And in terms of the resistance, what we have been doing through coral restoration, in some capacities has been perhaps successful. The jury's still out as far as restoring the reef to maybe look something like it used to, but not in terms of reproductive capacity, that there's simply not enough larvae essentially being created for the reefs to recover. The second, accept, is a non-starter, because to accept the situation means the demise of the diving industry, to say the least. And then lastly, direct is their point that maybe have reached a point where we direct the ecosystem in a different direction. And so you can imagine the kind of, and they don't add, they go through how this might happen in a very careful process. They're not just going to grab a bunch of corals from Hawaii and Indonesia and Australia and bring them here. They recognize this is probably a decadal issue, not something that's going to happen next week. But the fact that this is even being discussed among the scientific community, as I said, it was, to me, astounding. Of course, the whole issue is, what's the consequence going to be? And have we gotten to the point where, regardless, we need to try this? And indeed, what we have perceived as a Caribbean reef may be very, very different in the future. Understand that there are more or less 800 species, hard coral species, in the Indo-Pacific. There are only about 80 in the Caribbean. So the Pacific has 10 times the biodiversity. But what's really concerning is there are no shared species. There are only two shared genera, Acropora and Montastria. And so this is very, very much, to say the least, a risk. But the fact that it's being tried is being there. The other thing to kind of maybe provide some focus, I think most of you are familiar with orange cup coral, Tubastria. That's an exotic, that's an invasive species. It was brought into the Atlantic probably through shipping in the 1940s. And because it does not have zooxanthellae, it cannot create large coral. You'll never see a room-sized colony of Tubastria because it doesn't have the little algae it needs. And so they tend to be small, isolated clumps. But it has been shown that it is a very successful competitor, and in fact can outcompete in certain circumstances. So, there is evidence that bringing Pacific corals into the Atlantic already isn't necessarily a good thing. So I guess the purpose of my article was to, A, identify this is the discussion in the scientific community, and B, the methods by which this could happen. And to say that this is going to raise some attention is an understatement. So this was just kind of an awareness-raising exercise to make people aware of, A, how desperate things are getting, and B, one of the answers that 10 years ago would have never even been considered.
That's a great article. And it's not just me saying that. You're the third most read article this month already in the first 11 days of the issue. So people really were interested in that topic.
There you go. So you should be proud of that, I think, Alex, right?
Yeah, writing about the destruction of the entire Caribbean.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll be real popular.
Yeah. So we go from the second most read article to the number one most read article by a factor of almost 3 compared to everybody else. No offense.
Yeah.
So I'll let you introduce our next guest.
That's right. Dan Orr. He is the man, page 6 of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, recreational diving fatalities and underlying health issues. So the question is, what's risky about scuba diving, and what is the second leading cause of death in our sport? Going from one upbeat story to another. Here we go.
Yes.
When I do my these webinars that I do on dive safety, one of the things I talk about is risk. And what I do is I look at not only risk in scuba diving, but also risk in other sports. And I have a list of things. And one of the things that scuba diving is, it falls somewhere between horseback riding and table tennis. So your risk of dying on a dive is somewhere between riding on a horse and playing ping pong.
You put an eye out with that ball. Come on.
Well, and in fact, actually, I just to satisfy my own curiosity about what is out there in the internet and stratosphere, I went on GBT today, and I asked the question, is scuba diving a risky sport? And what it said was, scuba diving is a low-risk sport, which is really good.
Yeah,
because a lot of times people perceive it as being a high-risk sport. But also, in the other part of that question, where you're talking about the fact that, what is the second most leading cause of death in scuba diving, and it's cardiac events. And when you look at the number one leading cause of death, it's listed as drowning. But that really doesn't tell the whole story. And it's listed as drowning because of the fact that a significant number of the people doing autopsies following a scuba diving accident fatality have no clue on what to look for to determine what the real cause of that fatality is. So what they do, because the person is wet and they're dead, they simply list it as drowning. And in reality, about 30 to 40% of all the fatalities in some way, shape, or form have to do with cardiac events. And it's getting more and more prevalent because, of course, part of it has to do with our lifestyle, part of it has to do with a lot of other things, our age, because we do have an aging diving population. So it's not uncommon for those cardiac events to be a leading cause of fatality. And in fact, the genesis of this was when I looked at 2 reports. In 2008, Dan did a research project actually that involved looking at 947 fatalities to determine what the triggering event was that turned a dive into a fatality. And the number one triggering event in 2008 was running out of breathing gas underwater. So 41% of the fatalities had to do with people running out of breathing gas underwater. They then looked at another group of fatalities in 2015 to see if there'd been any change. And the change was dramatic. And now the number one leading triggering event was underlying health issues. And a significant number of those were cardiac events. So that's one reason why in the article, I'm saying you really need to look out for your cardiac health. You really need to, once you reach the age of 40 or even earlier, if you have some other warning signs, is talk to your physician and have a cardiac evaluation along with your annual physical. In fact, the American Academy of Underwater Sciences today just sent me a copy of their new medical questionnaire, and it also mentions in there that science divers over the age of 40 should have an annual physical.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, health is important when you're scuba diving. I know I'm not a perfect example when you look at me, but I take it pretty serious. And,
that's a great article. And you brought up a good point about the aging population. I know we've done a lot of articles on it. Sorry to cut you off there, Greg. But, I was recently talking with somebody on a call, and they said, the dive retailing industry in the United States is just going out of business. It's like crazy. People are just shutting their stores down and or they're selling I said to him, I said, well, have you ever done the math? Most dive shops in this country were started in the 60s and 70s. That's when the sport became commercial, where you could actually, the average person could do it. Got, of course, easier in the 80s, thanks to our Dr. Alex here. But but most of those were started in the 70s. Well, if you took a guy fresh out of college, or out of the military, which is where these people came from, our dive instructors back then, they were in their 20s, early 20s. Multiply the math, they're 65, 75. in the 80s right now. Well, of course, that's when you're going to retire and when you're going to either, sell your shop or turn it over. So a lot of the aging in our industry is a victim of how young our sport is.
Yeah.
We're only the second generation of our sport, technically.
Oh, yeah.
Good point. Yeah, but I think it keeps you young. So,
Yeah,
and use your training and scuba diving adventures as a reason to stay in shape. I know Gretchen's going to address that a little bit later on. But
yes, she sure is.
Move on to our next author. You ready, Willie?
Well, yes, this next one is our second most popular read this month so far. So congratulations, Kramer.
So there's like a competition going on here.
Not really, but I just thought we have new metrics so we can tell now a little different than we used to because we've switched over to this.
That's better than having to fight it out in like coleslaw wrestling, but that's
exactly
another issue altogether. Kramer's up next, page 43 in Scuba Diving Industry Magazine, The Barrier of Blue, How Fear of the Water endangers both youth and the ocean. So why is fear a barrier to conservation, and what can retailers do to help solve the problem there? Kramer, what can you tell us?
Ooh, big questions, right? First, I'm honored to be in the company of Dan Orr and Alex Brylske, so I'm like, wow, really?
Aren't we all? Yes.
Right. It's really and in line with both what Alex was talking about and what Dan is talking about, it's really, really challenging for anyone to care about the ocean in the event that they're afraid of it. Right? And we're not addressing where a lot of people are with respect to fear of the water and fear of the ocean. Right? So the idea is to explore where the fear comes from, to get to the root of it, so that we can teach people, right? Teaching people how to swim and how to dive removes or diminishes a lot of the fear that exists so that they can learn to love the ocean the way most of us already do.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Yeah.
And once you've overcome that hurdle, and what I spend most of my time doing is addressing people who have fears, to meet them where they are in their fear, and then walk them to a better understanding of the water and the ocean and their connection to it, because we're all connected to the ocean by virtue of being able to breathe and eat and protect our shorelines.
Yeah. Well, it makes total sense. I will say that, when you learn how to scuba dive, that my first 10 dives, I might as well have been blind. I mean, I was just focused on, okay, don't die. And then finally, after I got a little comfortable with the gear and diving, then all of a sudden, the lights come on and you're like, hallelujah, look at this beautiful scenery. But, you have to get through that hump and you might need a little help initially. Is that it?
Yes, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. And if there's an opportunity to go back, I'd really like to engage with Alex on his article and the idea that they're thinking about moving organisms from one ecosystem into another without addressing the challenge of our ecosystem in Florida and the Caribbean is algae proliferation. So bringing in more corals isn't going to address algae proliferation or the issue with lionfish or the issue with the pollutions that we're putting into the water. We have to address those things rather than going to, in my humble opinion, because otherwise that we're just creating more chaos.
Yeah. Alex, what do you think?
I agree completely, but I would add that there's really only one environmental problem, and that's too much CO2 in the atmosphere. Nothing's going to happen unless we reduce what we're putting in and pull out some of what we've already put in. Otherwise, the show's over.
Yeah, I want to comment on one more thing, Kramer, on your article. If you have not read it, please pick it up and read it. If you're listening to this now, it'll be on our hub. You can look at it online. But it's really fascinating. He cites the number one cause of death in children is drowning. I just didn't think about that, but it's amazing. Some other incredibly sad statistics as it deals with racial disparity. But one of my favorite lines, a lack of respect for the ecosystem is the natural byproduct of lack of familiarity. We protect what we love and we love what we understand, which is almost what Jacques Cousteau used to say word for word. If we continue to raise children who view the ocean through the lens of terror, aka I'm just inserting Shark Week here, we cannot expect them to fight for survival of the coral reefs or the health of our planet. which is the heart of your CARES program, of course, is helping that.
Yes.
So very insightful articles. There's a reason it's the second highest read article this month, is that it really resonated. So congratulations, Kramer, on a job well done.
Thank you, Bill.
There you go. Well, that's good stuff. But I don't know. Let's take a turn into the more positive, maybe. And I think David and Lily are up next, and they're going to do it because they on page 31 of the latest issue, they're doing an article called "A Group Dive Guide to Dominica, the Nature Island," which, by the way, I was asked to rate my favorite dive islands in the Caribbean about 10 years ago for USA Today, and I picked Dominica as number one. And it's still one of those diamonds in the rough there in the Caribbean. So why is Dominica the nature island, and why does it make it ideal for group trips? Lily, let's bring the rest of the class up to speed. What do you think?
Okay, well, Dominica is called the nature island because it's an island that is lush tropical rainforest draped over 9 different volcanoes that are there. So it makes it look like it's something from a movie from Jurassic Park or Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
Oh, hold it. They were
Yeah.
the movie. There was a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean filmed there,
Yep.
so you've seen probably a lot of the island already on your screen. But there's many rivers coming down the mountainous passages as there are days of the year. Plus, there's 18 waterfalls, numerous hot springs, and even a boiling lake.
Yeah, I don't know if Lily maybe can answer this, but I've been told that Dominica is the most volcanic island in the world. Is that true? And it's smack dab in the middle of the Caribbean and not the Pacific, which is kind of where you would think it'd be. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I've been told that in the past. And, I'm not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story. What do you think?
Definitely has a lot of volcanoes.
Yes, because it's not that big either. It's
No.
All the volcanoes are active. In the sense that there's rumbling way down below. They're dormant on here, but they're not, spewing out anything. But you can find a lot of geothermal activities all around the island there.
Hot springs.
So Lily can tell you a little bit about where it's located and everything.
What do you think,
Sure.
Lily?
Well, the island, it's located down in the eastern edge of the Caribbean islands between the Windward and Leeward Islands north of the equator. So air and water temperatures are quite moderate. They remain comfortable with water temperatures ranging about 79 degrees in the winter and in the lower to mid 80s in the summertime. And that allows for lots of nature to be found in the under the waves as well as above in the form. So coral in the form of hard and soft corals, sponges, gorgonians, and a wide variety of reef and pelagic fish, crustaceans, and even a residential pod of sperm whales that live out in the channel year-round.
Yeah, there's a lot to see around the island, and that's why it's a good place to bring a group of divers. We were there last May, bringing a group of 16 divers, and they had a blast both diving in the bay south of the capital of Roseau in the morning, and then exploring the island in the afternoon. It's easy walking around the old town of Roseau with its French-influenced architecture from the 1700s. But since Great Britain controlled the island for the past few centuries, I should say, the official language is English, which makes it easier to explore all on your own.
So there's many natural attractions to see on land tours in the afternoon after diving, or you can take a full day touring to different sites around the island to see the many waterfalls and geothermal hot springs. The volcanoes are dormant, but still active below the surface. And one of the popular dives is called Champagne Reef because of all the bubbles streaming up from the bottom of the reef from all the geothermal activities. So when you place your hand over the bubbles, it actually feels warm.
Yeah, and our favorite afternoon group tour took us to up in the mountains. First stop was a place called Tito Gorge, which means little hole. Several scenes from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies were filmed there because of the scenery here is very unusual, that it looks like a gorge, looks like a narrow crack in the mountainside with a clear stream flowing out of it. Our group swam into the gorge, and it seemed like a cave once you got into it, except for the little sunlight and foliage way up high along the cliffside. At the end of the stream inside is a waterfall that you can play in. And then when you're done there, then you just float back out. So our group was totally thrilled with that experience.
Yeah. Oh, well, anyways, we then came down the mountain and visited Trafalgar Falls, which has two separate falls side by side in a rainforest setting. So the taller falls on the left side are actually the waters from the Tito Gorge, which we were at earlier. After the falls, we completed our afternoon tour at the hot spring spa, where we soaked in several outdoor springs of varying temperatures, depending on what you could stand, for a relaxing day at end of the day. And there's many other waterfalls around Dominica to visit during the day. You can also take an afternoon tour that goes out in the channel to see the resident sperm whales that live there year round, and see also schools of dolphins and other whales migrating through the area. And for the evening, what was really special for our group is we had scheduled a catered sunset cruise around the bay, and it was a very memorable experience for our group.
Yeah. And another full day tour group of yours can schedule is to go up the island on the western side of the Caribbean. The eastern side's the Atlantic, which is rougher, but the western's the Caribbean, to the town of Portsmouth, which used to be the capital many years ago, and take the Indian River boat tour through all the mangroves. And they have a situation where your local guide paddles you up the river, points out all the interesting plants and wildlife and, things that live along the river. There's lots of birds, crabs, iguanas, and other things to see. So this is truly a nature island. At the turnaround point, there's a rustic bar to stretch your legs and take a short boardwalk tour to see more wildlife, and also get some refreshments. And on the return, you get to visit the Voodoo Priestess's shack that was built for the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and is now a tourist attraction that they've left up there so you can see. Also try to, while you're up there, to visit the old British Fort Shirley that protected Portsmouth's Prince Rupert Bay from French attacks centuries ago, because France used to have it, and then the British took it over, but the French tried to get it back several times. But anyway, there's lots to do and see on Dominica, both below and above the waves. So that's right, it's great.
Yeah. Beautiful place. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite spots on the planet. And that Voodoo Princess shack, I mean, in the Pirates of the Caribbean, I mean, I think you're supposed to think you're in the swamps of Louisiana, and it's right there in Dominica, amongst all the other
crazy
film locations they had for Pirates of the Caribbean. Be careful of the bush rum. That's all I'll warn you about.
Yeah. Well, and also shout out to Fort Young. Thanks for being a supporter of our publication. Hey, I think Chris and Mike are in the waiting room as well. Greg.
Got him.
Yeah. Hey, one point. Fact check. The Big Island of Hawaii, I just confirmed, is the most active. However, here's the important part.
Yep.
Dominica has the highest concentration of active volcanoes in the world relative to size.
Okay, so that's what I was told.
There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Alex, for
what can I say?
Adding Greg, some back, the truth to the nonsense I spew. I appreciate
we go from the fourth most popular to the fifth most popular article, and this is just by pure coincidence they're in this order, by the way.
All right. Well, Jeff McNutt from the BVIs. Up next, page 20, part 1, why dive centers need standard operating procedures, SOPs. So the question is, does dive BVI incorporate SOPs, and why do they make a dive operator more resilient than rigid? What can you tell us, Jeff?
Great question.
Absolutely. We have an SOP. And I wouldn't know what to do without it. As we've discussed earlier, we do work from different islands. We have different store locations, different boats, and staff that change out seasonally as well as long-term staff. So to be able to get everybody working on the same songbook is definitely something that's beneficial to your dive center, whether that's a retail store in the U.S. or an island location such as Dive BVI, or on a liveaboard boat where you're dealing with extra things such as overnight guests. It's really a very essential part of the business plan. I'm a bit of a scuba nerd when it comes to that, and it's been extremely helpful for us, and it's a huge part. We spend a full day on that and our employee handbook when we are training new staff. Annually, we actually close the store one day a year, and all the staff are in one room, so that they get the message up front that this is how things are run, and it just makes daily life a lot easier.
Makes total sense. And
I love this article. I love this series. I think it's so important, Jeff. And I'm sorry, Greg. You covered so much in this article. It's on page 20. It starts on, and he goes into some really great concepts of SOPs, such as it gives your staff guidelines. It gives them training rails. And Alex is a famous quote that I've used for many years, and that is that a standard or procedure is like a road, and as long as you stay on that line, the recipe that you're going to make comes out great. But then because the person in front of you taught you a little differently and the person in front of them taught you a little different, now you're going almost a left turn and the recipe's not right and you're not even on the trail anymore. And I've seen that personally happen so many times at dive operations. So Jeff, thanks for this really great, insightful article, and I look forward to your series on SOP development.
Yes, working diligently.
That's great.
There you go. Well, so do we go?
Just back from 3 good weeks in BVI. We had the humpback whales coming through, so I got to see them while snorkeling.
Wow.
Nothing like sitting on the wreck of the Rhone and hearing them sing while you're down there for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. What's your background? Where's that taken?
That's the wreck of the Rhone.
How beautiful.
So those are the actual floor supports. That's from the bow, which is laying over on its starboard side. But the wood rotted away, and those are iron beams that have been there since 1867.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't think about the wreck of the Rhone without thinking about Jacqueline Bisset. But that's
You're the first
personal issue. So,
well, I do a special white T-shirt dive if you want to come join me on that.
Don't want to see that, Jeff. Nothing personal.
I think it's going to be the same.
It's a little different, but
All right. Well, from one Jeff to another. Is that what we're going to do, Willie? What do you think?
Yeah, we are. And Jeff, Cinciripino, I really like this article. It's something that goes right. This whole issue is really about getting started on the right way this year. We have several articles that deal specifically with training, and I think this is the third or fourth article that deals with this. And Jeff, I think you really hit it on the head with this article for retailers especially. Yeah,
page 14. Now is the time to make time for training, like SOPs. I would assume, like the previous Jeff was talking about. Is that right? What do you think, Jeff?
That's it. I kind of last month I wrote the article about taking a look at your schedule and not getting yourself overscheduled and maybe cutting some things out and evaluating it. But really, don't cut out your training. I should have said that in that article. It's a very important part of the business. I mean, a small business, you can't afford to lose customers. And if you don't have your retail staff trained properly, who are actually have some customer service training and evaluate things, you're going to lose customers. So, or you might acquire a customer because you got some really good retail people up front. And then they're going to be more productive. I mean, have you ever gone to a store or something and you go up to the associate and they don't know how to do something and they're calling somebody in the back and then they're coming back out and they're all trying to solve the same problem? Well, to me, that's just shows that there's a lack of training there. People haven't been trained properly, whether they've been trained on the systems properly or the procedures. They don't know how to do something. So they're very inefficient. Now you've got 2 or 3 people helping one customer. Not really a good scenario. The consistency that Jeff talked about, everybody's doing everything the same way in your training. And then let's face it, there's safety issues associated with not having properly trained staff, and that can translate down into the liability aspects of it. So really, you have to look at who needs training, when they're going to get training, and you got to make the time for training. When you look at somebody bringing the regulator into for service, does that technician have his credentials up to speed? Has he been trained properly? Has things changed? So you don't want to send a customer out with a regulator that's been serviced by a technician who may have lapsed their certification. Just not a good scenario. Fill station, things all like that have to be trained. You have to make the time for it. So while I said don't burn yourself out and look at your schedule and get things evaluated, I wanted to follow it up by saying, yeah, but don't cut out your training. It's really important piece of your business.
Good stuff.
You know, Greg, he writes about something really important that Al just wrote about last month. He wrote about a case where, which Al can't join us today, and he wrote another really great article that everybody should read if you're a business owner, because it deals with a very sensitive topic. But he wrote last month about Al Hornsby, who I'm referring to, and he's the former executive from Patty that dealt with all the litigation over all the years that they dealt with. So he's kind of in a unique position that he understands what's going on in liability, and this series is all about it. But he wrote last month an article specifically about a store where a person perceived they received a bad airfill and had to go seek medical training, and their insurance company sued the store and got a giant settlement out of the settlement for it, because the dive center could not document that the operator of their fill station was following documented and approved procedures for how to fill the tank, but more importantly, where the air intake for the compressor was located. It was just like a typical shop. I shouldn't say typical, but some shops where you just don't have, you learn from the guy in front of you and you just do it the same way. So he even addresses that. And he said every individual who operates a fill station, this is Jeff's article, must be properly trained with proper documentation. There's also recertification requirements. So something so simple as an airfill you take for granted, but it's really essential that there is documented proof, because it does all matter when it comes down to a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. Got a CYA, everything you do, and training for you and the crew is a big part of that. All right, well, up next, it's time to get fit with Gretchen, our fitness or diving fitness guru. Page 28, Fitness Insights, Part 2, Transforming Observation into a Profit Center. So why is fitness a key component to retailers' long-term profitability there, Gretchen? What can you tell us?
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Well, I made some handwritten notes today, so I hope you don't mind if I use my notes. The first thing I want to say is that fitness for diving in your dive center turns your casual participants into lifelong, active, and high-spending divers. And I have about 7 ways that happens for you. If I kind of do an overview of the last article and the one before, it increases your customer retention and loyalty by helping to build trust-based relationships with your clients. There's a higher frequency of diving and more trips and more rentals, because divers who have a physical foundation of cardiovascular strength and endurance are more prepared for varied conditions at different destinations. It increases in equipment and retail sales. Fit divers are typically more active divers, and not only that, they like gear that fits really well. They like well-fitting gear. So that's kind of a sales opportunity. And then you can create a higher margin through certification. For example, fit divers who dive more often are also more likely to advance their training. That's something that I tell dive center owners all the time. Reducing risk, we've talked about that a lot, especially with Dan's articles. And also, when you think about reducing risk, if you have a safer dive shop, then the dive center's reputation is improved with lots of positive diving experiences, especially when clients go out and talk with other potential customers about, wow, I had this great experience, right? I was safe, I was trained, I went on this great trip, whatever it is, I found well-fitting gear. And then you can create a new revenue stream by teaching things like the ScubaFit diving course, right? And then also helping to maintain staff longevity, which I think is really important. Jeff was just talking about training. We all know how much it costs a business when you have employee turnover, right? You invest a lot of time and energy in individuals to train them, and you want to keep them a long time. And so I was actually thinking about a dive instructor that I met on the internet through my fitness website way back in early 2000s from Ottawa, Canada. And he had a background in hockey, competitive hockey. He also had been a dive instructor, an independent dive instructor for some time, but he ran to stay in shape for being a dive instructor. But he had a knee injury that was kind of bothering him, and he put on some extra weight. And so he called me and he said, "Look, I'm sitting on the side of the pool. I want to train customers, but I'm having trouble getting my fins on because I've got a little extra laundry over my six pack than what I used to have." Right. And so we actually picked a halfway point. I was visiting family in Western New York, and he drove down from Ottawa, and we ended up meeting up at a gym in Watertown, New York, of all places, a couple months later. And I was able to work with him in that gym. I arranged for it in advance, and we developed a program for him to help him lose that extra weight, to follow up with the rehab of his knee after the physical therapist was done. And he trained clients, very successfully for another couple decades after that. So that's just kind of a story about how maintaining staff longevity ties into fitness as a profit center.
Yeah, a healthy staff is a happy staff.
Yeah.
I think is one way to look at it too. You think,
Yeah,
Willie?
I do. I like you. One of the call out boxes in your article was position fitness as a performance, not a limitation. And you even made the suggestion of bundling fitness education with open water, advanced rescue, or dive master. Imagine the edge you would have as a retailer if you're offering an open water class, and included in all your open water classes is a ScubaFit program, which number one, it allows you to have more time with the customer, which builds that relationship deeper. And that's, if you remember, we did an article, I think it's back in 24, with Tom Laird at Laird's Underwater in Muncie, Indiana. They do a 7-week open water course. And the reason they stick to their guns with the length of it is that it builds a super strong bond with the customer, and they have an 85% sell-through and continued education. So, I mean, not saying everybody needs to do a 7-week course, but the whole point of it, ScubaFit allows an instructor or dive shop to bring that customer back in for another reason. And we all know the longer the exposure, the more exposure to the customer, the deeper the relationship, and the more they're going to go on dive trips and buy gear.
Yeah,
so,
and it's way cooler than Zumba, Jazzercise, or Pilates.
Exactly.
Well,
Say ScubaFit.
I wanted to add something to what Kramer said too about fear. When people are more comfortable with their body on dry land, they're more comfortable with their body in the water too. Things like proprioception, where you can train in the gym to experience and get more comfortable with where your body is in the space that it's in, and where your arms and legs are in relation to your body. These are things that come to the client through fitness training.
Yeah, fitness or therapy, whatever you need to get it done.
Good point.
All right, up next, we're heading to the Florida Keys, I believe. Aren't we, Willie?
Yep, we sure are. And Chris and Michael have done a great job, Christopher and Michael, on this article. And, the Florida Keys are written about all the time. I mean, they're in every major publication. So how in the world would a B2B dive industry magazine approach a destination like that? And they've come up with a fantastic article, because I love the fact that if you're a dive shop out there, you might have overlooked the Keys. Yes, the reefs are under a lot of pressure there, but guess what they have that are absolutely unbelievable? Wrecks. And a lot of them, and they're beautiful, and they're just getting better with every year that goes by. So they wrote an article for if you're a dive shop and you want to, and the wonderful thing about the Keys, and it's a little commercial for them, and they're not a client or customer or even an advertiser, but if you are a dive shop in the southeast part of the United States, which by the way is 2 out of every 3 shops in the country are in the southeast part of the United States, you could put a group together on a Thursday night and say, hey, we're all going to drive down Friday, carpool together, go diving Saturday, Sunday, and drive back on Monday. You just had a group dive vacation, no air, nothing. So, I mean, and very little planning it takes. So I love what they put together. They put together a variety of, basically a 10-day itinerary, but it doesn't have to be. That's the beautiful thing about the Keys. So we'll turn it over to you, Michael and Chris.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, thank you, Willie, for having us, and hello, everyone. Yeah, Chris and I, we are focused on destinations. We have been doing this for a long time, and the dive industry, there was a time where the Keys was it. that was, the coral reef you could drive to, and that was, a big deal back in the day. And it was, it was exciting and exotic, but yet it was still drivable. Diving has changed and people can travel to pretty much any corner of the world. And we wanted to take a look at the Keys, sort of revisiting it. Part of that is, Chris and I are spending time this year on domestic dive sites and domestic locations tied into the 250-year anniversary of the country. We're doing a bunch of work there. So we wanted to revisit the Keys. And yeah, when we go into dive shops, we see trips, here's a trip to Indonesia, the Maldives, Philippines, join us in Komodo. I don't really see dive trips to the Keys. And I thought, when Chris and I talked about this, we thought this would be a great thing to remind people. Exactly to your point, William. You can get in a car, you can do a caravan, you can, but you can fly there as well. But, you can spend as little or as much time there as you want and have an awful lot of diverse experiences. Yes, the reefs are degraded in many places, but there's still tons of fish. I was doing some diving in Isla Morada just a couple months ago. Tons and tons of fish. So if you're into reefs, if you're into underwater marine life, macro photography, wide angle, there's a lot of opportunities. And yes, the shipwrecks. There's a whole shipwreck trail starting in Key Largo, the Spiegel Grove, once tremendously written about. Now it's been eclipsed by other, larger, bigger wrecks. It's almost like a race to the biggest wreck. They're gonna sink the SS America in the Gulf soon, I hope. But the Spiegel Grove is an awesome dive, and continues to get better every year. The Thunderbolt out of Marathon, the Vandenberg out of Key West, there's tremendous wrecks. So if you're a dive shop and you're putting together an itinerary, you could put together a very varied itinerary for your clients. It could be wrecks, reefs, tech, recreational. It could be a long weekend. It could be 10 days. It's a lot of flexibility. And of course, there's a lot of dive operators to work with down there. And the Keys is a great place to finish off your certification. Chris, you can talk a little bit about that, because that's a big part of what people do in the Keys as well.
All right.
Yeah. So as everyone was saying, Florida is a world-class diving area. It has vibrant reefs. Hopefully they're coming back, and there's an array of shipwrecks there, and it's really a perfect, destination for, the group participants who would like to sharpen their skills and take on new certifications and specialty courses. I mean, hopefully the weather stays great when they're down there, but it's a perfect location if they wanted to, maybe get a deep diver or a wreck diver certification, maybe a boat diver, or maybe get nitrox. In fact, when Mike and I, got our certifications for deep and wreck, we did that in 4 days, and it was very ideal. You go there, you bang it out in 4 days, you got 2 certifications, and now you have the ability to expand your diving options. If basically dive shops want to bring, their own people, most dive shops should be fine with using outside instructors as long as they have the proper, insurance and credentials. But it's always best for them to prearrange the training and the checkout dives well in advance. So, the Keys are a perfect location if you want to get, new certifications for your, dive people.
Great intro place for sure.
Yeah. It's a great intro place.
Yeah, for a new diver, it's shallower than the east coast of Florida. I'm in Orlando. So when I first learned how to dive, I went down to West Palm. We did the drift diving. Jupiter's a little deeper, but you get down to the Keys, it's shallow, it's easy. That's one of the first places I send people that get newly certified. Go down there, get your fins wet, and go play around.
I would not recommend. I personally would not recommend Jupiter and West Palm for beginners, right? Because those drifts are pretty intense.
Can be
pretty intense. Yeah.
But
can I make a comment here?
Go for it, Alex. What do you got?
I've long believed that shipwrecks are the salvation of the Florida Keys. And I hope that the sanctuary recognizes this and makes the process of permitting much more reasonable. My good late friend Joe Weatherby, whom I miss, and it took him a decade to get the permit to be able to sink the Vandenberg, and there was an avowed policy against, or at least unsupportive of shipwrecks in the sanctuary, and I hope that attitude is reversed and that the permitting process could be expedited, because I think you're absolutely onto something.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well, they got that rec passport down there in the Keys that you can do.
Rec track, right?
Rec track, yeah. And
Very
let's
cool.
not forget frozen key lime pie covered in chocolate on a stick.
There you go.
That's pretty unique.
It's a part of the experience.
Absolutely. The best surface interval food you can have on the planet. Right there. Love it. Good stuff.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great article. Keep them coming.
Can I make a comment here on the Keys with regard to dive shops?
Of course,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think in addition to all the great stuff you can do, like the certifications and things like that, we took groups down there and we would add other land-based activities. Go to the Coral Restoration Foundation.
History of diving museums down there.
Yeah, History of Diving Museum. It's really, it makes for a great trip. And we used to like to do it early in the season to get people in the mood for diving again. So it really is a great place to head down there. But you can factor in a lot more. They can do the coral restoration, go out and do out plantings with either with Eye Care or Coral Restoration Foundation. So there's a lot to do down there. I love the Keys.
You're right, Jeff. It's also great.
So rewarding.
Yeah.
I've never put a person in the water and not had them come out changed and feel better about themselves for having done something about restoring the ocean.
Yes.
Good point.
Yes.
Good point. Did you have something else you wanted to throw in there? I don't know. Was that Michael or?
Yeah, that was Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
Kind of what Jeff was saying, about there's a lot of other land, options you have, but it's also great to bring a family down. So say, maybe a family or your, kids, maybe they're not certified yet, or maybe your wife or husband isn't. You can go out, do some diving, and then come back and then spend the day with them doing other land things. So it's kind of a great thing even for families.
Yeah, they're known for their rum down there too, if you're so inclined. But you don't want to mix the two too much. But yeah, you got a non-diving spouse. Keys pretty much has that base covered for you. Good stuff indeed. Willie, I don't know. Is that all we got for today, or what do you think?
I got two articles I wrote in this issue, and I'm going to talk about the research one first. It's a continuation of what we started last issue, which was a look back at the last 3 years from a research perspective and a look forward to 2026. I just have three brief things. One, the late Jerry Beatty and the current Mark Young, of course, used to own Dive Center Business Magazine and Dive Training, great people, preached for 3 decades that the power of the retailer and the future of the industry was always the new diver. We all heard it everywhere all the time. And what they were saying is that, and it's so true, in the industry, our only pipeline we have is new divers. That's how we expand and grow our sport, is bringing them in literally in a pipeline. That's why it's called a pipeline for the industry. And that pipeline showed a 25% increase in certifications in the fourth quarter of 25 versus 24. That's a very significant metric for our industry. We track, as you all know, these I've been doing it for 25 years actually, but it's really interesting to see a big jump like that. What that causes is that's an early warning indicator. It's kind of like a radar, because when the certification jumps starts in that quarter, the next progression should be they buy gear and they go on traveling. And so the fourth quarter projection, which is the second thing I'm talking about, shows that retailers in general and the industry in general expects higher gross revenues in the first quarter of 2026, which we're almost done with, versus last year. So that's a really healthy sign. And I do expect to see that continue, and hopefully that pattern merge with that giant influx of new certifications. Hopefully we'll see a surge in some equipment sales and a surge probably in travel before equipment sales. As the nature of the industry is going these days. The last thing is on that article on if you look on page 20, on page 18, I created two checklists, one if you're a manufacturer and one if you are a retailer. Just to kind of show you quickly, but that's just the one that we use for the retailers. And it's a checklist that you as a dive shop can download. You can print it out. You can pass it around at your next staff meeting. You can look at it and focus on it. And it's basically going to help kind of adjust your business objectives for the year and how you market diving with everything I've covered in the last two articles. So it's kind of, and there's one for manufacturers too. I don't have one for resorts yet, but we'll work on that. Maybe Jeff can help me with that one. Jeff McNutt. That's what I'm going to cover. It's a great article. The last thing I'm covering is I wrote an article based on a program that I did over the course of 15 years working in the Bahamas, is a training program that it's basically how to deliver extraordinary service. And it goes hand in hand with Jeff McNutt's SOP articles because it all comes down to having standards procedures. So he's tackling the tactical of how to create, then why you need those procedures. My 12-part series is tackling what happens if you do follow something like that. And it results in some outstanding staff and outstanding happy customers and better tips and so on. So the second installment this month was on the role of the dive captain on a boat. Next month is the role of the dive master. So there's I'm going to tackle a different thing, 12 different parts of dive operations. It applies to just about anybody that runs a boat operation for sure, but a lot of it will apply to any business in the diving industry because it just has to deal with having SOPs and then being able to measure, expect, and inspect, and inspect is the words they say. You know, you expect them to do their job, then you inspect it, and that's what I'm writing about. So I think that's going to do it. Next month we've got some really cool stuff coming in. We got a new article we're doing on the Southern Bahamas. We're going to continue our series on these dive travel guides. We've taken a very different tact than most magazines do, and that we provide a lot of tactical information. I love David and Lily's series that they've been doing. Dominica has been covered by the mainstream, and just like the Florida Keys that Michael and Christopher are doing. But from a group dive perspective, it's good information. It's great for a retailer. Save these articles when you're looking to expand your dive travel programs. I believe next month we're going to be going to St. Lucia, another island very similar to Dominica, at least in terms of appearance. So it should be a great article. Thank you, David and Lily, in advance for that. I know Dan has already written a fabulous article for next month that I love. So, and Jeff, keep them coming. Thank you again. But I think that's probably going to about wrap us up here. We're right at exactly about an hour and 2 minutes, which is the golden number for YouTube.
That's what we're looking for. Yeah. To make it last just long enough and keep your interest just enough. To make you a better business in the dive industry. Let's hope that trend of certs keeps going in the right direction and you're prepared for it by reading
absolutely.
The magazine.
And you know what? David just reminded me of something, and thank you, David, for that prompt. We sadly lost a pioneer in our industry this last week. Wayne Brown, CEO of Aggressor Adventures, if you haven't seen the news, battled an extended illness for a while and just passed last week. And so keep your prayers, the whole family in mind. Cole is Wayne's son-in-law, and he's basically, I think right now running the ship, but they've got a big transition and they've really made a huge difference in how people dive on liveaboards, and they recently expanded into river cruises and land-based excursions. They actually launched a television program through, I believe it's Spectrum, on cable TV for their ship, for their excursions. So they got a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, and everybody should just take a moment and think about Wayne and what he's done for us all.
Yep. We'll keep him in our prayers for sure. All right. Well, on that note, we are going to wrap up this edition of Scuba Diving Industry's podcast, Level Up. I am Greg the Dive Master for Scuba Radio. Check it out every Saturday, 3 to 5 Eastern Time. Till next time, remember, it is always better. Where, Willie? Come on.
Where it's down, where it's wetter.
Right.
This has been Level Up, the podcast of Scuba Diving Industry Magazine. Produced by Scuba Radio and the Cline Group. For more info, go to ScubaDivingIndustry.com.